Awesome way to head into our final kōrero when it comes to the whakamana session. And here I am willing to be corrected in terms of who has turned up today, hoi anō. It's all part of the growing organic nature of kōrero. But I would like to welcome Dion Pou. Dion is from the Atatu Marae Whanau Committee and Rivercare Te Wai o Pareira, who works with Bioheritage's co-leads of He Mātai I Te Taiao, Puke Timoti, no Tūhoi. Now, Puke, and also we were talking about Phil, who's not here today, unfortunately, but we are looking at aiming to use case studies from around the country to investigate the range of Te Ao Māori monitoring frameworks. But you're here, you're good to go. Nō reira, e kare mā, tēnei ka mihi, ka whakanuia Dion Pou.
Cool. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko te tuatahi he mihi aroha, he mihi tautoko ki a koutou, ko koutou e tiaki ana I o tātou taonga tuku iho, nō reira tēnā koutou. Ko a hau, he uri o rāhiri a hau, ko Ngā Pui tōku iwi, ko Dion Pou tōku ingoa. Kia ora whānau. So I am here through my mahi with Phil Liver and Puke Timoti, and ko te tuatahi, I just want to give a massive mihi tautoko to them and the way they've supported me and by extension the whānau and community I'm connected to at Te Atatu. My background's in ecology, but my mahi is in kaitiakitanga, so my mahi is all about place, about connections at place, and about people, about empowering whānau and community and empowering their connections to their place. So the kaupapa here has arisen out of that mahi. It's been going for quite a while, and it's ongoing. It's a big kaupapa for us, very localised and very place-based, but that's the whakaaro. So if you take anything away from my kōrero today, really the kaupapa is about e tirohanga Māori, e tirohanga, a worldview, and ways of thinking, and the thinking, the whakaaro that comes from that worldview. We all have a worldview, and we all have ways of thinking that are derived from that, and it affects everything we do. It affects the way you conduct your mahi. It affects the way we generate knowledge. It affects the way we apply knowledge, and it has implications through everything. So as a starting point, my kōrero was really about those worldviews. Our starting point for this kaupapa is really a tirohanga Māori at a really a Māori worldview at a really fundamental level. It's about place and connections at place and working forward from that. But in order to really talk to why that's important for us, I need to really contrast that with the status quo, which is the worldview that we work in our Western lives every day. Place and connections at place. Pepeha is our model for everything we do, which I'll talk to a bit further on. By way of demonstrating just how that way of thinking plays out and manifests itself in everything we do, and we deal with it in communities and whānau every day in lots of different ways, and many of them not positive. I leverage a kōrero that is attributed to Mason Jury, so I just want to tautoko where that came from, as far as I'm aware. And he was talking to those two different knowledge systems as being, he characterised Māoritanga as being centrifugal, because we're always interested in relationships, we're always looking outwards. By contrast, he talked about science and Western approach to generating knowledge as being centripetal, very much focusing in and really honing in on a kaupapa, which generates really dense points of knowledge, but it also manifests itself in other ways in practice. And I use my university training as an example of how this plays out. First year students, we start off very broad and generalised. I'm an ecologist, so biology is a first year. And then we specialise a bit more in second year. We specialise a bit more in third year. And you get the picture. By the time you've finished a postgrad or a PhD or whatever, you have, you're highly specialised and you have a lot of knowledge. Often about, as one of my bros says, know a lot about quite a narrow sort of kaupapa. It's not a bad thing in and of itself, but it's understanding how that can play out when we apply it. So not to pick on Healthy Waters. Healthy Waters are the Auckland Council department that are responsible for managing stormwater in Tāmaki. They're centralised, and they go out into communities to manage their stormwater for those communities, and by extension, in theory, to improve our quality of life in those places. So that's our conceptualised diagram of Te Atatu. That's our place. It's beautiful. For our urban space, it is loaded with taonga, with ecosystems, with threatened species. There are people in it, and that part is one of the most critical parts of the whole kaupapa, because people are part of place, and our target for our kaupapa is people. It is not necessarily te tai ao tuatahi, because that follows. We are part of tai ao. So that's Healthy Waters. They've got a $30 million project right now in Te Atatu looking at upgrading stormwater in that space because of intensification. When they go in to conduct their work and do their assessments, that's the scope of their assessment. However, the reality of the world is that specialisation is fantastic. We have specialisation in te ao Māori, we have our tohunga, but we always do it in the context of that wider environmental context, that social context, and whānau. When we don't do that, specialisations become silos, and we are fighting this constantly. And if you don't believe me, we literally, our main awa there, when I say awa, I am Matawaka, I'm born and bred in the north. Mana whenua there, te kawerau maki, and we share that space with them. But our people go to swim in that awa, and 50% of last year, you could not swim in it for fear of getting mawiwi. And in fact, we constantly have tamariki going into A&E. They cannot swim in that awa. So it's not just downstream environmental effects, because that's impacting all sorts of things, but it's also health effects, it's social effects. That space is the most Māori space on the planet in terms of numbers of Māori. There are more Māori in Te Waiao Pareira, Henderson Creek, West Auckland, than even Mangere, which is very close. But Kazis can't go for a swim. So they have safe swim flags there now, thanks to our whānau in this group, Te Waiao Pareira Rivercare. But they had to fight for that. And those safe swim flags tell you whether or not you can swim safely in that awa. You go over to the North Shore, it's like the outside of a circus tent. There's flags all over the place. So there's a massive inequity in that as well. And ultimately, it's disconnection driving disconnection, because for us as Māori, you know, those are our taonga, those are our kuaha, our portal, our entry point into a lot of our tikanga, into a lot of our knowledge systems, our maramataka. When that goes, we lose that opportunity to do that. In our urban whānau, 85% of Māori are urban, 85% of the population are urban. If we don't focus our efforts on our urban whānau, Māori or hapuri whānui or community, we're kind of missing the point. Conservation is a human kaupapa. Conservation, he aha te mea nui o te ao he tangata, doesn't mean we're more important than the environment. It just means if you want to achieve anything, you do it with people and you do it for people. The tai ao follows because it's part of who you are. On the left there, those shell banks down the bottom, those tāhuna, those are a threatened ecosystem. They're high priority for DOC. Some of the mahi I do is with the ecosystem research team in DOC. That's right at the top of the list. The tāhuna on the left is mawiwi. What's happened there is sediment paru has come down and locked that tāhuna in, and it's basically inert. It's a tohu for catchment health, it's a tohu for ecosystem health, it's a tohu for cultural health, social health, and te mea. On the right, that's what it should look like. Our mahinga kai has been wiped out in that space. It's disconnection driving disconnection. So, that's the context, that's the starting point. But if the problem is disconnection, then if you take anything away from this, Kazi Bros are the answer, because we're all about connection. And so what we've tried to do in Te Atatu, because we're mātāwaka, because it's not just for whānau Māori, it's for the wider community. We've really looked at first principles and how those first principles within tirohanga Māori, a Māori worldview, can actually generate outcomes where we're connecting people to place, whānau to place, or empowering their connection to place, community to whānau, and everyone to everything and each other. That's our target. Ultimately, our target is to show people how connected the world is and get their chins up. Then mahi a te mahi. It's about context and working within that context. It's also about leveraging for some potentially really a Māori worldview and Māori culture is more ecological than ecology. There is not a single concept that I've come across ever in ecology or much else of science, especially system sciences, that cannot be placed within Māoritanga that wasn't already understood in some way, shape or form. And it can generate some really sophisticated outcomes. So that's our home again. That was what it looked like before our marae whānau came along. So there were a lot of groups in there, a lot of environmental groups. The schools were all through that, but they were all engaging in their kaupapa and isolation. So we invited them into a matariki event one time with the intention of doing that. Because you're place-based, those kaupapa and those elements of the taiao that you're engaging with, because you're at place, they aren't just connected in theory, they're connected in the real world. And in fact, it's amazing how much whakapapa comes out of those connections. When you do that, those groups they're not just working on elements that are connected one to another, be it stormwater to freshwater to repo to moana. They're connected to each other. We don't tell anyone what to do. We just say to them, there's a tātai here, nā te mea te tātai ao, the name of our kaupapa. There's a tātai here, and if we acknowledge that, there's opportunity. It's not obligation, it's just opportunity. And that is what's happened. And what you end up there is essentially a network, really, is what we're constructing. It's highly connected communities and kaupapa, and it's basically a network of monitoring, education, and engagement, so that each one of those kaupapa talk to each other. For DOC, where we're looking at those tāhuna, those shenias, those shell islands, their health is contingent on the health of the catchment. Unless you're cognizant of those connections and you're engaging with them, you go do research on tāhuna, all you're going to do is tell everyone what they died of. You've got no connection to the processes that are impacting them or the community that will ultimately fix them. And so that's our kaupapa. Why is the backbone of our kaupapa? But the real target, he aha te mea nui o te ao, he tamariki, he tamariki, he tamariki. The shift in national curriculum has landed smack bang on top of our work. It's sustainable. When you have what we're looking to do now, we have teachers on placement with us from the Royal Society, is to generate kaupapa from which we can derive a curriculum that we can deliver to the kahui ako, to the local schools, so that those tamariki never leave that kaupapa, because they never leave their place, and they grow through that kaupapa at place, just engaging with it in more and more sophisticated ways. There's all sorts of ways you can take that, but ultimately it's our tamariki. The kaupapa is really, you get taught at Environmental Science 101. I'll talk for Auckland Uni, which I know. They say to those kids, man, first class they go to, we have a sustainability crisis, a biodiversity crisis, a climate crisis, and it's because of disconnection. But ana, they do their insects in the hunuas, they do their plants up in the Waitakeres, they do their marine labs up at Lee. We've managed to suck in some of the freshwater fellas down to Te Atatu, but it's disconnected. It's a way of thinking, and understanding how that way of thinking is actually driving disconnection. But if you start with some of those fundamental principles, it's amazing what falls out from there, and you can end up with really sophisticated kaupapa. What we'd like to do from there, and we're probing now, is doing some social research to ask questions about how, in a highly connected community like that, how does that then feed back into environmental outcomes? Because your community are monitoring, it's longitudinal. So you can keep on doing that. We can ask questions about how does this influence people's perceptions and attitudes towards whānau Māori. And we can have ask questions about the efficacy for education. And just to riff on that, and that Māori worldview and whakapapa is space and time. It's not just here. As we work back in our whakapapa, we work outwards through space and through time. And if you apply that, then you can do this. This is the long-term goal, to fix our awa and to fix that harbour. Is if you populate each part of that catchment and those schools and those communities, by extension, you've populated that whole catchment. You do that with the whau, you do that with te wao Pareira, kaipā tiki waititiko, waitemata. That's how you fix the Hauraki Gulf and everything else. You don't start down on the Hauraki Gulf. I do understand we have to be down there, but that's ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. We need to be working back to fix the ultimate kaupapa, which is in the whenua, it's in the catchment, it's our people and our tamariki. And then you can do all sorts of things. So that's our moi moia. We are long hikoi. Again, tautoko Phil and Poke, because they have been amazing. Tuturu Airs and the way they've supported us. They've always said to us, kia koutou te tikanga, te kaupapa, you know, ka mahi ato mahi. They have let us run with it and just supported us all the way. So, and to all of you, ko koutou e tiaki ana i o tātou taonga tuku iho, e mihi aroha anō. Kia ora koutou katoa.
Tēnā rawa atu koe te rangatira rawe. Conservation is a human kaupapa, disconnection is the problem and connection is the answer. And the way of thinking drives disconnection, but it can also drive connection as well in the real world, as you say. Just a great example. Waititiko is the name of the river that goes by my daughter's school. It used to be called Pasadena Intermediate. Now it's Waititiko Pasadena Intermediate. Pasadena's in California. But that's one of the questions I just saw in the Q&A. Go, how do we look at the Māori of te reo Māori and how does that impact in every way if we know of these rivers as Waititiko, that it feeds into all of the other kaipatiki, all the other rivers that you talked about, then we actually are contributing to the Māori in our everyday experience and understanding connection of our places. Nō reira, Māori ora kia tātou. Are we ready for a panel?